Mercedes have a lot of work to do to challenge Red Bull in 2023. Before they can even start building the car, there are some huge decisions they need to make, and they might be taking their inspiration from a surprising place. Want to know more about Mercedes' concept for next season? Then stick around for the rest of the video. Lewis Hamilton confirmed that it is Mercedes' intention to make plenty of changes for their 2023 challenger. The Silver Arrows came into the 2022 campaign on a run of 8 constructors' titles in succession, determined to prove their ability to extend that run despite major changes to the regulations, while Hamilton had the motivation of chasing an 8th driver's title after the controversial circumstances in which he missed out last season. But the Mercedes W13, while eye-catching, has failed to deliver a win across 14 races so far in 2022. Red Bull are now seemingly well on their way to the Constructors' title, as Max Verstappen rapidly closes in on making it back-to-back World Championships. Hamilton has finished P2 twice so far this season, but back at Spa, a race he retired from after colliding with Fernando Alonso on the opening lap, the Brits seem to suggest that maybe there is not a huge amount of potential in the W13. Mercedes have consistently claimed that the data is showing them that there is. Asked if Mercedes are now starting to share Hamilton's stance, he told Sky F1, "I think so. I think there are obviously bits to it that are good. There is performance in there. It's just whether or not you can utilize the performance. And whether when you put the car on, you want a car that works on every single track you go to." A big problem for Mercedes this season has been their inability to adapt to different tracks. George Russell securing the first pole of his career in Hungary was an encouraging sign for the Silver Arrows. The next race though, in Spa, they were well off the pace. Hungary and Belgium are two very different tracks, at the extremes of what is required of F1 cars. At the high downforce Hungaroring, the W13 performed incredibly well in qualifying especially, and the team secured only their second double podium finish of the season. In Belgium though, the exact opposite was true. Spa requires much less downforce, allowing the low drag cars to make the most of the long straights. The W13 just wasn't able to adapt though, and Mercedes had the same problem in Monza recently as well. Red Bull have been the complete opposite. They've been able to perform at every track so far this season. Even if they haven't been as fast as Ferrari in qualifying, they've excelled on long race runs, no matter what the track demands of the car. In search of this kind of form, Hamilton admitted that he and the team sees a lot of areas of the car which they want to change for 2023. "The Red Bull generally seems to work in the majority of places," said Hamilton. "It's understanding why, and somehow working it into next year's car, wherever that aero characteristic balance is, making sure that the car works everywhere. But there's loads of bits of this car that we would change, that I would change as well, and that's what we're going to try and do for next year's car." It might be Red Bull who are the key to Mercedes making a comeback next season. Before the season started, Formula 1 Managing Director Ross Brawn said he was expecting 20 pretty similar cars, considering how strict the design rules are in F1. But when Mercedes W13 was first seen, it was completely unexpected. The Zero Pod concept was initially called innovative and revolutionary, and straight away there were rumors that teams would protest. The media thought we were in for another era of Mercedes dominance from the get-go. As the season has gone on though, those non-existent side pods have been the focus for many people when describing the errors made by the Silver Arrows. It is thought that the lack of side pods left the floor edges unprotected from air moving over the car, causing flexing and a significant porpoising problem. They could carry over the side pods into 2023, where a few tweaks to the floor rules may work in their favour. Or they can try a different concept such as Red Bull's race-winning downwash side pods. Mercedes trackside engineering director Andrew Chauvelin says that they've yet to make that call. "I think the rules do change for next year. That's going to change how people are looking at developing their car," he said. "You'd always say that the fastest car is the one that's got the best concept. So, today that's going to be Red Bull. Where that goes into next year, it's difficult to say. Certainly we, as a team, have not fixed what our car is going to look like. We're still exploring different concepts. That process will go on for some time, but we're just looking for what will give us the best development opportunity in those new regulations going forward. The side pods are certainly not the only thing that makes the RB18 as fast as it is though. Formula 1 cars are far more complex than that. It's definitely an important part of the whole aero model, as Red Bull technical director Pierre Wash says. I think it is just one part of the puzzle, this kind of side pod aspect, the invisible part. And for sure, if you develop your car around a certain concept, if you change it, it will be difficult to find the benefit of it. I think you have to be very open-minded on how you see the car and the concept of the car for the future. Whatever Mercedes decide on, it would be incredible to see them turn up to the first practice of the 2023 season with Red Bull side pods from 2022 bolted onto their car. Just imagine the uproar if they did something like that. Picking how to design their car for 2023 isn't quite as simple as looking at Red Bull and saying, that looks good, and then just copying it. The design process for an F1 car is very data-driven, but Mercedes have had huge issues with how their data matches up to what their car is doing this year. This has led Toto Wolff to question whether they can trust themselves in changing concepts, even if it looks better on paper. Whatever we decide for next year needs to be carefully evaluated because clearly our data don't give us the results and don't correlate with the reality. We have massive swings in performance that we can't really get on top of. In this very moment, to take a decision for next year, whatever it may be, like changing the concept dramatically, how can you be sure that that's the better direction to go? Because clearly we'll be starting a little bit way back. While Mercedes has gone it alone with its zero-pod design this year, in contrast to Red Bull's downwash concept and Ferrari's inwash, the biggest difference between the cars actually relates to how and where they produce their downforce. The Mercedes only appears to hit peak performance when the car runs super close to the ground, which is why it has had such a problem with bouncing and the floor hitting the ground. Red Bull appears to be at the other end of the spectrum in being able to deliver its best performance at higher ride heights, which was one of the factors in it being so dominant around Spa-Francorchamps recently. Wolff is clear that a concept change for Mercedes would likely go well beyond just tweaking its side pods. It's quite difficult to say what is the concept, he said. Is it the chassis in its current shape? What is that? Is it weight distribution? Is it where you can put the mechanical and aero balance? Is it in the bodywork concept? All these different pillars of the car are evaluated, and it could mean that some of that goes and some of that stays. And that's what we're looking at the moment. With all these discussions going on in the background, Mercedes need to make a decision soon over what they plan for next year. For all we know, they may have already, but their interviews are hiding it well if they have. Formula One cars take a long time to design and produce. There isn't a Ford conveyor belt system that lets them push out thousands of cars a day. An F1 car takes months to build from scratch. Mercedes need to have their design path confirmed as soon as possible to give them time to build it before the first tests in early February next year. This is now a crucial period. Literally over the next 1 to 2 months we need, with a certain degree of precision, to understand what needs to be done for next year, Wolff said. Mercedes' issues have been felt most by driver Lewis Hamilton, who was looking forward to fighting for his record-breaking 8th World Drivers' Championship. At the start of 2022, he said he wasn't worried about the Mercedes car's pace because his team don't make mistakes. That didn't last long though, and it only took a few races before the British driver was seen being given a telling off by Toto Wolff for blasting the car his team had built over the radio, calling it the worst car I've ever driven. Despite all that has happened this year, Lewis is confident Mercedes will be back fighting next year. There is potential in the cars. We've got downforce, it's just in some places where we're not able to utilize it, he said. And ride quality, of course, is an area that we can always be better. So I'm comfortable with the direction that we're going, and I have 1000% confidence in the guys back at the factory, who are stringing together all the pieces of the puzzle, and have no doubt that we'll be back in a fighting position next year. Mercedes have made mistakes this year with their design. The team have openly admitted as much. After winning 8 Constructors' titles in a row, they now have to show humility and look around and see what everyone else is doing and decide if it can help them. The RB18 might just be the muse that Mercedes need to get back to winning ways in 2023. Do you expect Mercedes to ditch the zero pods for next year? And will they replace them with something like we see on the RB18? Let us know your thoughts below in the comments, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.